Hi, welcome back to my reading corner. And get your cozy blanket and maybe a comfy pillow, and let's read. So we're reading When the Dandelions Sing, and today we're reading Chapter 1, The Birth of Ronnie. Because of the rapidly accumulating snow laying softly on the roads in town, Mama had to be particularly careful driving herself to the emergency room after her water broke while carrying me. She was working at Roxy's diner part-time while going to school to learn how to do important office work or something like that. She said she needed to educate herself on how to file important time-sensitive petitions, whatever those are, how to talk with people on the phone who were always demanding and screaming, and how to handle others in suits who had come from better backgrounds than any of us had. She knew that if she worked hard enough and was dedicated to what it was she wanted to do, we could all grow up to wear suits one day too and be just as important as those folks were. Mama was always working towards something better, a way to get all her kids dressed well for their jobs, so she could in time look back on her hard work and know all those long hours of studying and working late was for good reason. She didn't want the same old over and over anymore. She wanted to break the reoccurring chain, she said, and give us a better chance at life. Plus, she figured, at least one of her kids would succeed enough to take care of her when she grew old, frail, tired, and needed to retire. She was always talking about retiring. I had no idea what any of that meant. But I knew I wanted to give her that one day. I would be the one making all the money, telling people what to do, and they would have to listen to me, and Mama would be so proud of me as she sat, retired, drinking lemonade on her front porch. I don't know what else she would be doing while retiring, but I wanted to do that for her because it's what she wanted. The time wasn't right for my arrival, though. She was only 34 weeks pregnant, and I was coming before she had a chance to prepare all the other children at home. When she left that afternoon, just after her classes finished for the day, she figured she had a few more weeks left in her to work the diner and finish out her semester at school, with plenty of time to have me and then get back to class and work. I wasn't having it, as Grandma would say. When I wanted something, I was persistent. This was just the start of my persistence, apparently. The world was a big, beautiful place, full of curious wonders, attractive dancing colors bouncing around, and riveting sounds. These were the things I just had to know about. So I was being my impatient self and broke Mama's water so I could come out and see all the things I needed to. Because the diner was packed, being that it was supper time, and guys and girls were just finishing work at the nearby steel plant, Stapleton Brothers Steelworks, Mama told her boss she would just drive herself. This was her fourth baby, and she was fine enough to know she had plenty of time to get to the county hospital on the other side of town, have me, and be home by the following evening, resting in bed. Besides, they were short-staffed as it was. The snow was falling hard, and the other waitresses didn't have four-wheel drive, so getting in was not a problem. But getting home would be an entirely different story. Mama had a faded orange Scout with a white stripe a third of the way up, so she could get around just about anywhere she needed to. The driver's side door would stick more often than not, so she would need to either crawl through the window or open the passenger side and crawl across the seat over the center console and into the driver's seat. It was winter, so the driver's side window was naturally up already. This made it so she would need to open the passenger side door, pull herself up to the seat, slide across the hard, freezing, cracked black leather over the center console, and pull her body under the steering wheel so she could start the Scout and drive. Mama loved her orange and white Scout, but it had grown temperamental. She'd had the car ever since Granddad gave it to her, and it was getting old. She hated asking for things, but more so, she hated that her kids would go without if she did not. Mama was always putting her pride aside when she really needed to, and Granddad never made her feel bad about it. He knew she was struggling and trying with good intent and just having some dumb bad luck, but he blamed himself for not giving her the life he had envisioned for her years before. This was why he was proud of her. She was going to school, something he'd never done, nor had anyone in his family he could remember of. She would be the first, and he was proud of that fact. She would break that link in the chain and change paths for her kids. That made him pleased to help whenever he could, and so he did. As soon as she was under the steering wheel, strapping the seatbelt over her shoulder and stomach carefully, and she had pulled her keys from her purse, she said a quick prayer. She needed the Scout to give her no trouble, just do its job and start. Get her to the county hospital, and then it could do whatever it wanted. She just needed this to go smoothly. So she sat there, eyes closed, hands woven tightly together, prayed, and placed the keys in the ignition. Then she gave it a turn. At first it seemed like her prayers had fallen on deaf ears as the Scout just cranked and cranked, but she didn't give up hope, and finally it turned over and started. She put her head gently against the steering wheel and whispered to either God or her car, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Mama put the Scout in drive, cleared off the front windows with the wipers as best she could, and pulled out of the parking lot in front of the diner. She drove past the neon sign missing the Y forever, it seemed, so people called the diner Rox's, and onto the white snow-covered road. As she went right, she realized the hospital was only about a 10-minute drive, and that she would easily make it if nothing happened along the way. Things were looking up. She needed this desperately. It was time for a change, and this would start her off onto a new, greater path. Mama had had some bad luck in the past that always seemed to surface at the wrong time, but she never let that get her down for long. She always told me that if butterflies could come from a worm-like creature, turn into a hard shell, become a pile of mush and guts inside that shell, and then emerge this gorgeous, beautiful, colorful creature, then God could do the same for her. She was, after all, just like a butterfly. She had been a scrawny kid growing up, much like a worm is, and she had learned to grow a hard outer shell because she was picked on so much as a child. Plus, she was full of guts and mushy things, I figured, and eventually she would emerge into a beautiful creature. Although I always saw her as pretty anyway, she was just tough on herself. Granddad said she was always looking for more in life than she had, so she would be hard on herself until she had it. He never felt she would ever get enough, though, and he admired that. She was always yearning for more. She would read books on everything and anything, always keeping her mind sharp as a tack, and work hard at the classes she attended. She would fall asleep in the dining room on the dining room table on many a night and wake up just in time to get us kids ready for school, then go back to class herself, then to the diner, and home to repeat it all over again, day after day, and night after long night. By the time she pulled up to the county hospital parking lot, the snow was slowing some to a soft drizzle, and she could see the night much better. The brilliant white snow had created a glow on the road, and as her lights danced back and forth off the cresting snow, she was singing to herself a song to keep calm. She was making the words up, trying to stay in tune with the lights dancing on the road, and trying to pass the time as quickly as she could. I was coming, and she knew I wouldn't wait much longer. She needed only to get to the front doors, and they would quickly bring her wheelchair. She would be in their hands, thank God. She kept telling herself it was just a few minutes away. The entire time she told herself that, even though the snow made it an arduous journey more than it would normally be. Her song kept her feeling comfortable and surprisingly calm, and she sang and sang, impressing herself with the words and the tune she carried that seemed just to come out of her mouth in a poetic, rhythmic way. When she finally pulled up, parked, and turned off the Scout, she was putting her keys in her purse and getting ready to exit through the passenger side when she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She hunched over instantly, holding her right side tight with both her hands, and breathed rapidly. As she tried to slow it down, the pain grew more and more intense. She wouldn't wait it out, she thought, and then she would wait it out, she thought, and then continue with her crawling to the other side of the car so she could pull herself down and into the waiting hospital only a few dozen yards in front of her. She just needed to be patient and calm, and she tried her best to be just that. To distract herself, Mama sang through the searing pain, and this time the words did not come as easily as they had earlier. She tried to remember the song she had just made up that had been beautiful and flowing and came so easy to mind, but she was now struggling to form even one line. Maybe if she just tried to focus on her breathing, how she had done with each of her other 3 kids, she would be just fine. So she counted her breathing, how long the breaks between the sharp dagger in her side were, and noticed they seemed to be getting shorter and shorter. Growing more concerned, her last thought was to lay on her horn and pray someone inside would hear her Scout's cry for help. Come out and help her. This would be harder than she anticipated, and she was now getting quite nervous. Never one to be nervous. For the most part, she scared herself. Panic was taking over, and she knew she had to do something, anything, and fast. It was getting late, and the heavy snow now covered all the spots next to where she parked. Because she was feeling pretty good on the way over, she had not pulled up to the entryway, and now she was regretting that decision. Mama was a strong-minded person, always one out to prove her worth, and she wanted to walk in by herself just as she had driven on her own with no help from anyone. This was her trip, her journey, and she was tired of people telling her how to travel it. She would be damned if she let anyone tell her she could not, when she knew clearly she could, indeed. But this was scary. This was not normal, and she was willing to let others assist her only when she was at her end, and she was getting pretty damn close. As she leaned forward, still clutching her stomach with her right hand, feeling like lightning was striking her abdomen over and over, she laid on the horn, and for dear life she pushed as hard as she could with her free left hand. The air was quiet, and it was probably heard for a mile away, but no one came. She started to cry, now hitting the horn in repetitive motions, hoping someone inside would tire of the racket and come out to see what was going on in their parking lot. So she hit it again and again, and through her tears, the sheer pain, and the slowing snow, she saw not a soul. That is when Mama gave it all she had and fell onto that horn with both her hands and her head with all her might. Knowing she was about to pass out from the pain, yet not willing to let that noise stop until anyone, heard it and helped. That was all she remembered of that night. She collapsed onto the hard black steering wheel and fainted from the increasing nonstop pain. In her mind, no one heard her at all, and no one would come to her aid. Her greatest fear that evening was that she would not be able to keep her weight on the horn while she was unconscious, and no one would find her and her baby until the next morning. And this hurt her more than the pain she felt in her abdomen. Within minutes of her passing out, a nurse working behind the desk stepped outside for a cigarette break and looked out into the parking lot. She heard the steady noise of the horn coming from this snow-covered, faded, orange Scout, and quickly ran back inside to get security to check it out. When they arrived at the car, they noticed Mama was passed out at the wheel, but didn't know that she was pregnant just yet. The dark cover of night made it hard to determine what was going on exactly, and they could not pry the driver's side door open, figuring it was simply locked. One guard walked around to the passenger side and discovered that it was unlocked. When he wiped the snow off the handle, opened the door, and gently pulled her head off the steering wheel to stop the obnoxious noise, he quickly told his partner and the nurse that had walked up with them, "This lady here is pregnant." They worked to get Mama out, and after realizing the driver door was busted and wouldn't open, they slid her over carefully to the open passenger side. One of the guards picked her up in his arms, turned to the nurse, and asked her to check on her, and they realized she was alive. He hurriedly carried her through the slippery parking lot, being so careful not to slip on the slick snow covering everything in sight, and into the front doors of the emergency room. The front desk nurse ran to fetch a wheelchair, and they placed her in the chair as gently as they could and pushed her through the second set of doors into an open area where doctors and nurses were talking about this and that, and to a room just off the hall. He laid her down on the bed, helped the nurse remove her jacket, and watched as she seemed to just sleep through it all. Having done all he could, the guard backed up just into the hall, but not out of sight. He could see and hear the doctor now checking her vital signs and shouting orders to the nurses that had also clambered into the room to see what was happening with this woman. The floor-length white curtain around the bed were closed hastily, and the old security guard, who had 8 grandchildren of his own, leaned against a wall and mumbled a prayer for the young, delicate-looking woman he had just carried through the dense snow to get her the help she so desperately needed. By morning, Mama had made it through, and she had a second son to show for all that pain. When she came around, she realized what had transpired the night before and smiled gently, knowing that once again, when she had a desire to do something, she did it, regardless of the odds stacked against her. She knew that laying on that obnoxious horn had saved her life and the life of her baby, and it took everything she had in her to do that simple, mindless task, yet she had done it. Not knowing how the night had gone was somewhat of a relief to her. Her side had stopped the sharp, piercing pain she felt just the night before, and for that she was relieved. She noticed the snow outside was falling once more, and the fresh coat of white made her feel at peace. My Grammy and Granddad came to the hospital as soon as a storm allowed, and Mama noticed that her dad looked exhausted. He had not been feeling himself, and when he heard from another waitress that she had driven herself through the snowstorm to the emergency room, he was sick to his stomach. Mama was his only daughter, and he wanted things to turn around for her desperately. It was just his way to want his children to have all they could ever dream of. But his drive was not as strong as it had once been. He had fallen victim to a job that, while paying the bills and providing for him and Grammy in their retirement years, was far short of what he had intended when he was a young man. He had hopes, dreams, and goals to pursue. He was strong, hard-working, and although not properly educated, had the mind to fix anything around him that could be broken. He was a gentle giant, and how his large frame had produced such a frail, tiny, almost fairy-sized woman was anyone's guess. Maybe that was why he tried to do so much for Mama, because she was so different, so small, so fragile. You would never know it, though, because Mama was a pistol. She allowed no one to get over on her. People knew who her daddy was, and they feared what he could do with those massive hands of his, but she had been determined to have people respect her just the same, and they eventually did. "Hey, little DB, how are you feeling?" he said to Mama. Mama was born Dolores Grace McFarland, but Granddad called her DB because she was tiny, but had the bite of a buzzing bumblebee at the end of the summer, knowing it was about to end its life cycle. From an early age, she had that bite. No one else could call her by this nickname but her daddy, because he had made that up for her, and it was their thing. At 5 3/4 inch tall, you would think people wouldn't care much for what she preferred, but she was respected. People did not go out of their way to bother Mama. Maybe Granddad had something to do with that. Maybe not. Either way, it didn't matter. She was respected from the time she was in high school and stopped taking bull from anyone and everyone around her. People liked her, but they also respected her for her passion towards life. "I'm feeling fine, Daddy, only tired and woozy. What did they give me this morning? I cannot feel what they did to me at all." I feel like I'm on a floating cloud looking down and watching this all happen right here and now. You're just fine, he said, smiling. The doctors know what they're doing. You just rest now and let us take care of the kids. Besides, you haven't even told us what you named your boy yet. What's our newest grandson's name going to be? All at once, Mamma felt very confused and as if she were not even in the room. Somehow, she was holding on to me, bundled neatly in a blue, pink, and white striped blanket, and not even known if or what she had named me. Nurse, nurse, she called out. Yes, dear, what is it? The nurse replied. I'm sorry, I feel so out of it, and I just realized I've not given you the name of my baby yet. When do I give you that? The nurse smiled at Mamma and simply told her, Dear, you named him first thing this morning. You were adamant, in fact. Don't you remember that at all? Embarrassed now, Mamma didn't know what to say. She didn't know how much about, she didn't know much about my father at all. He had told her so many lies while eating in the diner that she thought she knew, but quickly realized she did not. Now her baby had a name she knew nothing about and had no recollection of it coming from her lips. Granddad quickly interjected, Miss, she's had a long night. I'm sure you understand. Would you mind telling her Mom and me the name? I know she wanted to surprise us, but now that the secret's out, we just would like to know the full name, just the same. Of course. I'm so sorry. She named the baby Ronnie Jefferson McFarland, Jr. This is how I entered the world. On a blistering cold, snowy February morning, Ronnie Jefferson McFarland, Jr., although my father was, as far as we all know, not named Ronnie Jefferson McFarland, Sr., that part simply remained a mystery, and I was okay with that. I had my mama, and she had me. All was good with our world. And that's the end of Chapter 1. Come back for Chapter 2 tomorrow. Have a good night, and as always, love Nan. Bye.